Good morning, everybody. This is Jimmy. This morning as I was reading Luke's Gospel, I was reading the account of the crucifixion of Christ, and I noticed Christ, as we all know, was on the cross, and he was saying and crying out after having been crucified, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And I thought that was kind of ironic, because if you would have asked those soldiers who were crucifying Christ, and if you would have asked Pilate, and if you would have asked the Jewish leaders who had handed over Christ to be crucified, they would have all said they knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, the Romans, they were experts at crucifixion. This wasn't their first rodeo, and this wasn't the first time the religious leaders of Jesus' day had handed somebody over to Rome to execute. So far from being ignorant and not knowing what they were doing, they knew exactly what they were doing. Yet I find it amazing that even in them knowing exactly what they were doing and doing so quite confidently, that Jesus still had a forgiving spirit in his heart, in which he was able to cry out to his Father that even though these guys are crucifying me, even though they know exactly what they're doing, Father, forgive them, for they don't really know what they're doing. And I believe that is a spirit that you and I need to embrace, and the spirit you and I need to take up in our daily lives, because frankly we come across some ignorant, stupid people in our lives. We come across people who do things quite deliberately, but Jesus calls us to look on those people who do those things quite deliberately and quite intentionally and quite confidently, in a spirit of forgiveness, to cry out to our Father in heaven, to look after them, to take care of them, and to ultimately forgive them for what they're doing. Because even though what they're doing is quite intentional, Jesus calls us to say, hey, I may recognize that you don't know what you're talking about. I may recognize that you're ultimately ignorant, and not in some sort of cynical, jaded sort of way, but hey, this person really doesn't know what they're doing. Even though they're quite confident, Jesus still calls us to walk in that spirit of forgiveness, and he embodied it ultimately and demonstrated it on the cross, where he cried out to his Father to forgive them, for they knew not what they do. And when he finally breathed his last spirit, he ultimately resigned himself to God, to say, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. In the same way, when we come across ignorant people who are hurting us, who are doing us wrong, who are mistreating us, who are crucifying us and killing us and saying all sorts of terrible things about us, we need to ultimately entrust ourselves to our Heavenly Father, who is able to ultimately take care of our spirits, and resign ourselves to him and leave ourselves